The sun was shining brightly in the small town of Orange, Texas. Birds were singing, the sky was clear, and everything looked perfect. It was the kind of day people wish for when they plan a wedding. That day was special, not just because of the good weather, but because two young hearts were going to become one. Harley Morgan and Rhiannon Boudreau, both just 19 years old, were getting married. They had known each other since high school, and anyone who saw them could tell. They were deeply in love. They didn't just love each other, they were best friends. They laughed together, dreamed together, and promised to stay together forever. Their families were excited. Friends and relatives came to the small chapel where the wedding was going to take place. The chapel was near the highway, a quiet place, surrounded by greenery. Everyone was smiling, dressed in their best clothes, holding gifts and flowers. Some had tears in their eyes, not because they were sad, but because they were happy. It was a beautiful beginning, and everyone felt lucky to witness it. Harley wore a black dress shirt and dark jeans. He wasn't trying to look like someone from a fairy tale, he just wanted to be himself. Rhiannon, on the other hand, wore a simple white dress. She didn't wear a heavy veil or lots of jewelry. She didn't need them. Her smile was bright enough to make anyone stop and stare. When she walked down the aisle, Harley's face lit up. His eyes followed her every step. He looked nervous, but happy, like he couldn't believe this was really happening. As the music played softly in the background, the minister stood in front of them. The crowd went quiet. Everyone watched as the couple held hands. The minister spoke about love, trust, and the promise of staying together in good times and bad. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Harley looked into Rhiannon's eyes and said his vows. He promised to protect her, care for her, and stand by her side no matter what. Then Rhiannon, with a slight smile and teary eyes, made her promises too. She told him he was her best friend, her partner, and that she would love him for the rest of her life. When the minister finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the guests clapped loudly. The couple kissed, and it felt like a moment taken straight from a movie. People stood up, some whistled, others shouted words of joy. Photos were taken. Some guests even went live on social media, showing the world how beautiful this young couple looked together. After the ceremony, they walked out of the chapel hand in hand. Outside, Harley's mother and sister waited, excited to take more photos. They were filming the couple, laughing and cheering as Harley opened the door to their orange Chevrolet car. Rhiannon waved to the guests, and Harley gave a thumbs up. They were planning to go to his mother's house first to change clothes and then head off for their honeymoon. They didn't have a big plan for travel, just wanted to spend time together, away from everything. Everyone watched as the car started to move. Some guests threw flower petals in the air. Others shouted, "Congratulations!" and "Good luck!" The car moved slowly at first, then picked up speed as it turned onto the highway. Harley was driving, and Rhiannon sat beside him, laughing at something he said. Behind them, his mother and sister followed in another car. They were still recording, wanting to save every bit of the special day. The air was filled with happiness. The future looked bright. No one could have imagined what was going to happen next. For Harley and Rhiannon, this was supposed to be the beginning of a long and beautiful life together. They were young, full of dreams, and had so much to look forward to. In their hearts, they believed they had forever. As they drove away from the chapel, the orange car stood out on the road. People on the street saw them and smiled, guessing they were just married. Everything was peaceful. There were no dark clouds, no signs of danger. It felt like the world itself was celebrating their love. But sometimes, life can change in the blink of an eye. Their love story had taken years to build. They had studied together, gone on countless dates, supported each other during hard times. When they decided to get married, they didn't want a fancy ceremony. They didn't care about big decorations or expensive food. They just wanted each other. That was enough. Harley used to tell his friends, "When I'm with Rhiannon, Everything feels right. And Rhiannon once wrote in her journal, "Harley is my home. Wherever he is, I want to be there too." They believed in forever, and they weren't afraid to chase it. The guests began to leave the chapel one by one, still talking about how beautiful the wedding was. Some were planning to meet the couple later that evening. They imagined the two laughing, cutting a small cake, dancing, in a living room instead of a ballroom. It wasn't about how big the wedding was, it was about how big their love was. Back in the car, Harley reached over and squeezed Rhiannon's hand. She smiled at him. They had made it through the most important part of the day. Now, they were husband and wife. Their adventure had just started. Rhiannon talked about how funny it felt to be called Mrs. Morgan now. Harley laughed and said, "Get used to it, wife." They joked about their future, about how many kids they'd have, and what their house would look like. They didn't know that others would be talking about this very ride, not because of the love, but because of the loss. But at that moment, none of that was on their minds. They were just two young people in love, driving down the road with nothing but smiles on their faces and a lifetime ahead. Or so they thought. The people in the car behind them, Harley's mother and sister, were laughing too. They were joking about how fast things had gone. "Just this morning you were asking where your socks were," his mom had said earlier. "Now you're a married man." She felt proud of her son, proud of her new daughter-in-law. She had recorded the whole ceremony and now was filming them as they drove ahead. She zoomed in on the back of the orange car. A "Just Married" sign was taped to the trunk. Two soda cans dragged behind, clinking and clanking on the pavement. The sound was light, funny, full of life. For everyone watching, it was the happiest day they had seen in a long time. No one could sense the storm coming. In stories, people talk about signs, something in the wind, a strange feeling, a sudden silence. But there was nothing like that here. Just smiles, sunshine, and love so bright that it felt like nothing could ever go wrong. And yet everything was about to change in the most terrible way. In just a few minutes, that perfect day would be remembered not for the vows or the kisses or the laughter, but for something far more painful, something that no one could have imagined, even in their worst nightmares. The orange Chevrolet rolled gently down the quiet road, its paint shining brightly under the warm afternoon sun. Inside the car sat Harley Morgan and Rhiannon Boudreau, newly married and filled with joy. Their faces glowed with happiness, and their hearts were light. The day had been perfect so far. The ceremony had gone smoothly, surrounded by loved ones who had smiled and cried with them. Now, just 30 minutes after their wedding, they were on their way to Harley's mother's house, a small drive away, to change into more comfortable clothes before starting their honeymoon. The road stretched out before them like a ribbon, bordered by tall trees and open fields. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle breeze fluttered through the car's open windows. Harley was driving carefully, his hands steady on the steering wheel, though his heart raced with excitement and nervousness. Rhiannon looked over at him, her eyes sparkling. She laughed softly at a joke he made about how he hoped he wouldn't mess up the first drive as a husband. Harley smiled back, feeling lucky to have her beside him. Behind their car, following, closely but at a safe distance, was Harley's mother and his younger sister. They had insisted on keeping an eye on the couple to capture every moment on video, wanting to remember the day forever. Harley's mother was the one holding the phone, filming their son and his new bride as they drove down the road. She was smiling, proud and happy for her son, capturing every second of this special time. The road was familiar to all of them. They had traveled it many times before, but today it felt different, full of hope and excitement. The sky was a deep blue, with the sun shining warmly overhead. It was a day that felt made for love and happiness. As Harley drove, Rhiannon rested, her hand gently on his arm. They talked quietly about their plans for the future. They dreamed about a small house with a white fence and a garden filled with flowers. They imagined having children who would run and play in the yard. They shared hopes and promises in whispered voices, voices filled with love and trust. The car passed a few houses and a small farm, the kind of peaceful place where everyone knew each other. Some neighbors waved as the car passed, smiling at the sight of the young couple. The air was fresh and smelled faintly of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. It was a perfect day to be alive. Suddenly, from the opposite direction, a large black truck appeared. The truck was pulling a big trailer behind it, making the vehicle look even larger and heavier. The driver of the truck was a man named John, who was hauling equipment for his job. He was tired but alert, carefully watching the road as he drove. The truck moved steadily down the two-lane highway, surrounded by trees and gentle hills. John had been driving for hours that day. His mind was focused on getting home safely, on finishing his work and seeing his family. The road was familiar to him too, but like any road, it had dangers. The highway had sharp turns and narrow shoulders. Trucks like his had to be careful, especially when pulling heavy trailers. As John rounded a curve, something unexpected happened. One of the tires on his truck suddenly blew out with a loud bang. The sudden loss of pressure made the massive vehicle jerk violently to the left. John struggled to keep control, gripping the steering wheel tightly as the truck began to swerve. The trailer behind him swung dangerously wide, making it even harder to correct the path. For the people following the couple, the scene was terrifying. Harley's mother and sister in their car behind the Newlyweds could see the truck lose control. They shouted warnings, but there was no time. The black truck veered into the lane where Harley and Rhiannon were driving, heading straight for them. Harley saw the truck coming toward them like a giant beast. His heart stopped for a moment. He slammed on the brakes, desperately trying to steer away, but the road was narrow, and the truck's momentum was too strong. The orange Chevrolet was no match for the enormous truck and trailer. In a terrible instant, the two vehicles collided head-on with a deafening crash. The sound was like thunder, a sickening, loud noise that echoed through the quiet countryside. Metal twisted and glass shattered. The force of the impact was so strong that the cars crumpled like paper. Pieces flew everywhere. The air filled with dust and smoke, and the smell of burning rubber and gasoline. Harley and Rhiannon's world changed in a second. They felt the violent jolt as their car was crushed. Time seemed to slow down. Rhiannon screamed, and Harley tried to protect her, holding her close as their bodies were thrown forward. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. The last thing they saw was the angry face of the truck driver, eyes wide with fear and shock. Outside, the wreckage, Harley's mother and sister jumped out of their car, horror flooding their faces. They rushed toward the crash site, but the scene was terrifying. The orange car was mangled beyond recognition, steam rising from the engine and smoke drifting into the air. The black truck had stopped a few feet away, its front end damaged but still intact. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance. The sound grew louder as fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars rushed to the scene. Neighbors and passers-by stopped, some calling 911 on their phones, others just staring in disbelief. The beautiful day had turned into a nightmare. The emergency. Workers worked quickly, but there was little they could do. Harley and Rhiannon were trapped inside the wreckage. The paramedics tried to reach them, but the injuries were severe. Within minutes, they declared that both had died at the scene. The shock was unbearable. Harley's mother collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. She could barely understand what had happened. Only moments ago she had been filming the happiest moment of her son's life. Now she was witnessing the worst. Her son and new daughter-in-law were gone. Their lives ended so suddenly, so tragically. The small community around the crash site was stunned. Word spread quickly. Friends, family, and neighbors gathered near the chapel and the hospital, waiting for news. Tears flowed freely. People held each other, trying to find comfort in their shared grief. The news of the accident spread beyond the town, reaching faraway places through social media and news reports. People everywhere were shocked to hear that a young couple had died just minutes after their wedding. The story felt impossible to believe, a cruel twist of fate no one could understand. In the hours that followed, the police began investigating the crash. They spoke with the truck driver, John, who was shaken but unharmed. He explained the tire blowout and how he had lost control. Tests showed he was sober and had followed all the rules. The accident was declared just that, an accident, with no one to blame. Still, no explanation could ease the pain of those who loved Harley and Rhiannon. Their friends and family mourned deeply, struggling to accept that their future was gone. The orange Chevrolet was towed away, leaving behind a scar on the road and on everyone's hearts. The memories of that day, filled with joy, laughter, and hope, were now mixed with sorrow and loss. What had started as a perfect wedding day had turned into a heartbreaking tragedy, one that no one would ever forget. Yet even in this darkness, the love Harley and Rhiannon shared remained alive in the hearts of those who knew them. Their story was a reminder of how quickly life can change and how precious every moment truly is. The moment the crash happened, time seemed to stop for everyone nearby. The peaceful road that had been filled with the happy sounds of celebration was suddenly filled with a terrible silence, broken only by the screech of metal and the breaking of glass. The orange Chevrolet, once shining and full of life, was now a twisted heap of metal. The black truck that had collided with it sat nearby, its front damaged but still standing. The air smelled sharply of smoke, gasoline, and something darker: loss. Harley's mother and sister were the first to reach the wreck. Their hearts pounded wildly as they ran toward the crushed car. Their eyes filled with tears and horror at what they saw. The windows of the car were shattered, and the body of the vehicle was crushed inward. The bright orange color was barely visible beneath the damage. The smell of burning rubber filled their noses, and smoke drifted slowly from the engine. It was hard to believe that only minutes before, their son and his new wife had been full of life, laughter, and dreams. Emergency workers arrived quickly, rushing to the scene with flashing lights and loud sirens. Firefighters and paramedics jumped out of their trucks, grabbing tools and stretching equipment to cut through the twisted metal. Their faces were serious and focused. They understood the urgency but also the danger in what they faced. Their goal was to save lives if they could, but deep down they feared the worst. The rescue team worked carefully, cutting into the wreckage to reach Harley and Rhiannon. The sounds of hydraulic cutters and saws filled the air. The tension was thick. Friends and family stood back, covering their mouths and crying quietly. Harley's mother clutched her chest, her knees shaking. She could barely breathe as she watched the scene unfold, praying for a miracle. But the paramedics soon came to a painful conclusion. Despite their best efforts, both Harley and Rhiannon had suffered injuries too severe to survive. The force of the crash had been brutal. Both had died at the scene, their lives ending in the blink of an eye, just 30 minutes after their wedding. The news hit everyone like a wave of ice-cold water. The grief that followed was overwhelming. Word spread quickly throughout the small town and beyond. Friends, neighbors, classmates, and strangers alike mourned the sudden loss of the young couple. Social media exploded with messages of sympathy, shock, and sorrow. Pictures of Harley and Rhiannon smiling and happy from their wedding day appeared everywhere. People shared stories of the couple's kindness and love, unable to understand how such joy could turn into such tragedy. At the hospital, Harley's mother sat in a small waiting room, surrounded by relatives and close friends. Her face was pale, eyes swollen from crying, and her hands trembled. She kept whispering their names over and over. Harley, Rhiannon. It was as if speaking their names would bring them back. But she knew deep down that was impossible. The community that had gathered was in shock. The same people who had celebrated with Harley and Rhiannon hours earlier now found themselves standing together in silence, sharing grief instead of laughter. They spoke in hushed voices, trying to make sense of what had happened. It was hard to believe that such a young couple with so much life ahead could be taken so suddenly. Harley's friends described him as a caring and gentle soul, someone who always put others first. Rhiannon was known for her bright smile and warm heart, always ready to help anyone in need. Together, they were a perfect match, a pair who inspired hope and happiness wherever they went. As the news traveled beyond the town, many people began to ask questions. How could this happen? Why did it happen so soon after such a joyful moment? What caused the truck to lose control? People wanted answers, looking for reasons to explain the inexplicable. Authorities began a thorough investigation to find out exactly what had caused the crash. Police officers examined the scene carefully, measuring skid marks, looking at the damage to both vehicles, and gathering witness statements. They spoke to everyone who had been nearby, including Harley's mother and sister, who had seen the terrible moment when the truck veered into the wrong lane. John, the truck driver, was questioned extensively. Though shaken by the accident, he was cooperative and honest. He told the investigators that his tire had suddenly blown out, causing him to lose control of the massive vehicle. He described how the trailer he was pulling made it impossible to steer back safely, and how he tried his best to avoid the crash. Tests confirmed he had not been drinking or using drugs. His driving record was clean, and there was no sign of negligence. The investigators concluded that the crash was a tragic accident, a rare but devastating event caused by a tire blowout and the resulting loss of control. There was no fault or blame assigned. Still, for the families and community, this knowledge brought little comfort. The shock waves of the accident affected everyone deeply. Harley's mother struggled to cope with the unbearable loss of her son and new daughter-in-law. The pain was raw and endless. She often spoke about how she still remembered filming the couple just minutes before the crash, capturing their smiles and laughter, and how it now felt like a cruel joke. Friends and neighbors held memorials and vigils, lighting candles and sharing memories of the couple. Flowers were laid at the crash site and at the chapel where the wedding had been held. The small town came together in an effort to support one another through the darkness. Some spoke about the fragility of life, reminding everyone that happiness can be fragile and fleeting. Others talked about the power of love, the love Harley and Rhiannon shared, and the love that remained for them even after they were gone. Counselors and support groups were offered to those who struggled to accept the tragedy. Many found comfort in talking about the couple, keeping their memory alive. Through stories and photographs, the story of Harley and Rhiannon became a lesson to cherish every moment, to hold loved ones close, and to never take life for granted. As days turned into weeks, the community slowly began to heal. Though the pain never fully disappeared, people found strength in each other and in the memory of the couple. The tragedy brought the town closer, reminding everyone of the preciousness of life and the importance of love. The story of the young couple who died just 30 minutes after their wedding became a symbol, a reminder that life is unpredictable and that happiness can sometimes be heartbreakingly brief. But it also showed the power of a community to come together, to mourn, to remember, and to support each other in the face of loss. Even in death, Harley and Rhiannon's love story touched the hearts of many. Their names were spoken with reverence and sadness, but also with hope. Hope that their love, though cut short, would inspire others to live fully and love deeply. The memory of their day, the day of joy, the day of dreams, and the day of tragedy, would never be forgotten. It remained in the hearts of those who loved them, a bittersweet reminder of how quickly life can change and how important it is to cherish every moment we have. The shock of the accident was only the beginning of a long, painful journey for the families and everyone who knew Harley and Rhiannon. After the crash, the reality slowly settled in, like a heavy cloud that refused to lift. The days that followed were filled with sadness, confusion, and questions that had no easy answers. The small town where Harley and Rhiannon had lived suddenly felt empty. The places that once echoed with their laughter and plans for the future were now silent. Their friends found it difficult to face the world without them. School halls, local cafes, and parks felt different, as if a part of the town's heart had been torn away. Harley's mother was overwhelmed with grief. She had lost her son, the boy she had watched grow up, and now he was gone. The pain was so deep it seemed impossible to bear. She spent many nights awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to accept the truth. The sound of Harley's laughter, the way he used to smile, and the hope they had shared for his future, all of it was now just a painful memory. The family struggled with the funeral arrangements, a heartbreaking task made even harder by the suddenness of the tragedy. Friends and relatives gathered to say goodbye, filling the church with tears and quiet prayers. The ceremony was a mixture of heartbreak and love, where stories about Harley and Rhiannon were shared, celebrating their lives even as everyone mourned their loss. Rhiannon's family also faced unbearable pain. They had just welcomed her into the family, full of hope for her happiness and future. Now, they had to say goodbye, holding tightly to memories of her bright smile and kind heart. The bond between the two families grew stronger, united by their shared sorrow and the love they had for the couple. The community came together to support both families. Neighbors brought food, helped with chores, and offered a shoulder to cry on. Schools organized gatherings to remember Harley and Rhiannon, where students and teachers spoke about how much they had meant to everyone. The kindness and support were a small comfort amid the grief. At the same time, the investigation into the accident continued. The police and safety experts studied the crash site and the truck's tire blowout in detail. They wanted to understand how such a sudden failure could cause so much destruction. Their goal was to find ways to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The tire manufacturer was contacted, and experts examined the defective tire to see if there had been any problem with its design or production. The company cooperated fully, hoping to learn from the accident and improve safety standards. At the same time, truck drivers across the region began to pay closer attention to their tires, knowing that one small failure could have deadly consequences. John, the truck driver, found himself dealing with more than just the legal and official side of the investigation. The emotional weight of the accident weighed heavily on him. Although no blame was placed on him, the memory of the crash haunted him. Every day, he had been driving safely, trying his best, and yet the accident had still happened. He often replayed the moments before the crash in his mind, how the tire blew out, how he tried to regain control, and the terrible collision that followed. The guilt and sadness were hard to escape, even though he knew it wasn't his fault. Support groups and counseling helped him cope, but the pain remained. Meanwhile, friends and family tried to find ways to heal. They organized memorial events to celebrate the lives of Harley and Rhiannon. These gatherings were filled with stories of their kindness, love, and dreams. People shared photos, played music they loved, and lit candles in their memory. One event was held at the park where the couple had planned to have their wedding reception before the accident. Friends and relatives decorated the place with flowers and balloons. They planted a tree in their honor, a living symbol of growth, hope, and remembrance. As people gathered around the tree, they shared their feelings, finding comfort in the community's support. The tragedy also sparked conversations about safety on the roads, especially for large trucks. Local authorities started campaigns to raise awareness about tire maintenance and vehicle inspections. Drivers were encouraged to check their vehicles regularly to prevent accidents. These efforts were meant to protect others from experiencing the same heartbreak. Harley and Rhiannon's story became a powerful reminder of life's fragility. It inspired many to cherish their loved ones more deeply and to never take a single moment for granted. Their love, though tragically cut short, left a lasting impact on those around them. In the months that followed, the families began to find ways to honor Harley and Rhiannon's memory beyond memorials. Scholarships were established in their names to help young people pursue their dreams. Charitable events were organized to support causes they cared about, keeping their spirit alive through acts of kindness. Through all the sadness, there were moments of hope. Friends remembered Harley's laughter, Rhiannon's warmth, and the plans they had made for their future. They imagined what could have been, but also celebrated what had been, a brief, shining moment of true love and happiness. The pain never fully disappeared, but the community learned to live with it. They held on to the memories, the lessons, and the love that Harley and Rhiannon had shared. Their story was passed down, a testament to how love can endure even in the face of tragedy. In the end, the young couple's legacy was not only in the sadness of their loss, but in the way they inspired others to live fully, love deeply, and treasure every moment. Their story reminded everyone that life is precious, sometimes fragile, and always worth celebrating, no matter how short it may be. After the shock and the grief had settled somewhat, the story of Harley and Rhiannon continued to touch many lives in ways no one could have expected. Their tragic loss became a catalyst for change and healing, not just for their families, but for the whole community. What began as a heartbreaking ending turned into a story of hope, strength, and the power of love to overcome even the darkest moments. In the weeks and months following the accident, the families worked hard to keep the memory of Harley and Rhiannon alive. They wanted the world to remember not just how the couple died, but how they had lived, their kindness, their laughter, their dreams, and their love. Family members shared stories about the small things that made the couple special. The way Harley's eyes lit up when he talked about his future with Rhiannon, how Rhiannon loved to bake and bring treats to their friends, and how together they brought joy to everyone around them. The pain was still there, of course. Grief never truly disappears, but it changed. It became a part of their lives, something they carried with them but didn't let destroy their hope. The families began to find ways to celebrate the love that had brought Harley and Rhiannon together, instead of only mourning the loss. One of the ways they did this was by creating a foundation in their names. The foundation was dedicated to helping young couples and families, especially those facing hardships or tragedies. It aimed to support them emotionally and financially, so others wouldn't feel as alone when facing difficult times. The foundation also promoted road safety awareness, emphasizing the importance of vehicle maintenance and careful driving to prevent accidents like the one that took Harley and Rhiannon's lives. The foundation organized community events, workshops, and memorials that brought people together to share their stories and support one another. These events were not just about remembering loss, but about encouraging hope and healing. Families who had suffered their own tragedies found comfort and strength by connecting with others who understood their pain. Meanwhile, the local government took important steps to improve road safety. Inspired by the accident and the foundation's work, officials introduced stricter regulations for commercial trucks. Regular inspections for tires and brakes became mandatory, and drivers received better training on how to handle emergencies like blowouts. These changes helped prevent further accidents and saved lives, turning tragedy into progress. John, the truck driver involved in the crash, also found a way to heal. After counseling and support, he began working with the foundation, sharing his story to raise awareness about road safety. He spoke honestly about the accident, the guilt he felt, and how he was trying to move forward. His courage helped others understand that accidents can happen to anyone, but how we respond to them can make a difference. Friends and neighbors continued to honor Harley and Rhiannon's memory in their own ways. The tree planted in the park grew strong, its branches reaching toward the sky like a symbol of hope and life. Each year, the community held a special ceremony there, where people shared stories, sang songs, and lit candles to remember the couple. The ceremonies were filled with warmth and love, turning the park into a place of peace and reflection. In schools, teachers used Harley and Rhiannon's story as a lesson about the importance of safety, love, and living life to the fullest. Students learned not only about the dangers on the road but also about kindness, compassion, and the strength of community. Many students were inspired to become more careful drivers and to value the people in their lives even more deeply. Harley's mother, despite her ongoing pain, became a powerful advocate for road safety and support for grieving families. She spoke at events, sharing her experience and encouraging others to take precautions and cherish their loved ones. Her voice, filled with both sorrow and hope, touched many hearts and helped raise awareness in the wider community. Rhiannon's family focused on continuing her legacy of kindness. They organized volunteer projects and charity drives in her honor, helping those in need and spreading the warmth she had always shown. Their work reminded everyone that even in loss, love could inspire good and make the world a better place. As time passed, the story of Harley and Rhiannon became a symbol of how life, even when cut short, can leave a lasting impact. Their love story was not just about the tragedy of their deaths, but about the joy they shared, the dreams they had, and the hope they gave to others. It showed how, even in the darkest moments, people can come together to support each other and create something beautiful. The legacy of the young couple reminded everyone that life is precious and fragile. It taught the importance of living fully, loving deeply, and taking care of one another. Their story became a guiding light for many, encouraging people to appreciate every moment and to be there for others in times of need. In the end, Harley and Rhiannon's love lived on, not just in memories and stories, but in the hearts of everyone they touched. Their brief time together became a powerful reminder that love, kindness, and hope can shine through even the greatest sadness. Their legacy was a gift to their community, inspiring change, healing, and a renewed appreciation for life. This story, though born from tragedy, became one of strength and hope, a true testament to the power of love to heal, inspire, and unite people even after loss. And in that way, Harley and Rhiannon's spirit continues to live on, forever a part of the lives and hearts of those who remember them.